to Talking Galloway podcast. I'm Angela from the YouTube channel Galloway Retold.
And I'm Andy from the YouTube channel Stravaiging with Andy. Today we're going to be talking to Ros Ollin, poet and author of the book Restoring Elspeth, all about Elspeth McEwan, who's the last person to be burned as a witch in southwest Scotland.
And we've also been out and about again, so we've got some interesting footage for you, and we will be covering our normal magazine section of Cultural Glenkens and Concerning Corpaths.
So Angela, what have you been up to?
Well, I've been gadding about quite a lot. I got a new lens for my camera, so I've been sort of like testing that out, but we've also been out and about at a few things. We did a bit of filming up at Paul Maddy, which was interesting. We wanted to get the drone up because with it having been as dry as it's been, we've had a tiny bit of rain this week, but we'd had a good spell of no rain for a long time. So, you know, when you see these things from above, when it's been really dry, then you can get a much better view of what's been there. So, and we also went down to one of the nights of the Kirkcudbright Summer Festivities, which was last Thursday. Every Thursday during the summer, they're having what they're calling a Scottish night. Yes.
In Scotland.
In Scotland. I'm not going to pass much comment on that, but I would call it traditional.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
yeah. So we went down there and we just kind of gathered about Kirkcudbright a bit because it was beautiful light, and they had a pipe band, and they had people doing some Scottish country dancing and stuff like that. Highland dancing in the Harbour Square, and that happens every year at Kirkcudbright. All the way through the summer, there are loads of things going on. I will talk a bit about that later on. In fact, give you a bit more about that later. But it's worth going. Well, Kirkcudbright's worth going to anyway.
The artist town.
The artist town, yeah. And a wee bit of gadding about, catching some B-roll in CD. I will eventually manage to get myself this video together that I've been meaning to do, but I have been conspired against in getting moving. But I think we'll get there. So, what else have I been doing? It's mostly about playing with the new lens. And of course, we spoke to Kathleen, didn't we?
We spoke to Kathleen on a live radio.
Yeah, and
we'll be releasing, hopefully, some of the recording from that at some point in the near future.
In the near future. Maybe by the time this podcast is actually out, you will have been able to have a listen to that. If you've actually caught it whilst it was on, that'd be nice to hear from you. Tell us what you think. We were just promoting the podcast, weren't we?
Just having a good conversation. Time absolutely flew.
Yeah, it was. It was quite nice. So what about yourself then? What have you been up to?
Well, last couple of months have been pretty tricky. Yeah. Dealing with a family medical issue. Yeah. I've been doing kind of full-time care for a while now, but this last couple of months has been full-on care. Hopefully
on the mend.
On the mend now, on the rise. Yeah, thank you. And so I'm a bit behind with my videos on my channel. I have got out on one walk, got up to Woodhead. Oh yeah, where the lead mines were. Aye, so I started off in Carstfern. I'd recommend starting at the lay-by rather than starting at Carstfern, because it's not a fun road to walk along to get to the starting point. No, there's that big long straight out of Carstfern that feels like it's just going as you go to Lagwain, and that's a bit long and slow and boring. You do get to see the castle on the way, which is one of the reasons I did decide to go that way. I haven't actually done much research into that. I will see. That's where the macadam who invented tar macadam was born. And apparently the reason why it's a ruin was it actually had a fire. And he as a baby was passed out of the window to rescue him from the fire. So I wonder where it's a good job that happened, because things could be very different nowadays. I wonder if driving on concrete roads or something. I don't know how receptive they would be, because they would crumble. But yeah, so just on that note, so obviously went along there, past the castle, and then up the farm track, up towards basically the base of the Rinsa Kells, up to Woodhead, which was founded by...
It was Colonel Cathcart McAdam, who actually married into the McAdam family. Did you see the stone circle on the way as well?
Aye, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, the Daltalochan.
That's not too bad, Daltalochan, yeah, it's not too bad.
Stone circle. There was sheep in the field, so I couldn't actually go up to it at the time, had Loki with me, so... Yeah. But it was a beautiful day. It was actually slightly cooler, there was a bit of a breeze.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I haven't checked my audio yet, so...
fingers crossed.
But yeah, it's a lovely wee walk up there, and as I say, it gets you right up to kind of the base of part of the Rinsa Kells.
Yeah, like it's quite dramatic, the way that the hills kind of go up from there.
And you're kind of looking up the wee glens, the kind of out back beside the Garries.
No, it's great. It's a lovely spot. It's a nice walk. Every single time I've walked out there, it's been absolutely scorching hot, so completely melted on the way. Even though it's no more than 2 miles to the lead mine from there, probably less. Well, you see, you walked from Carstfairn and I walked from the lay-by like a sensible person.
So yeah, I think it was about 3 odd miles from Carstfairn, I think, so that would make sense. And it's just one of those. It's, as we mentioned, it's been very warm. Like, too warm to take the dog out during the day most days.
Yes.
Very warm. It's been very warm. So warm that it's dangerous to take the dogs out during the day, especially if you've seen my videos and you've seen Loki, who is a black Borodor, and he feels the heat.
Yeah, he will do. Like my cats.
And there's not too much accessible flowing water along there, so
no, there's not.
It's a bit cooler, and there's a nice cool breeze that kept some of the flies and the midges away.
Which is good, because there's quite a lot of horse flies along that way. If there was anything I was going to say to people about taking that walk, watch out for the horse flies.
The clegs.
Clegs. Evil clegs. Yeah.
But it's a beautiful walk, beautiful day. It's also like there's a loop you can do around there that takes you all the way around to Brockloch.
Yeah, and then you have to come all the way back down the road.
Or come back this way, go back to the part of that loop. There's a route out to the back of Glentroll, which also takes you past Drumjohn, the power station there. It's a small power station, but it used to just be a needle, but I think they've upgraded it now.
Because there was the needle valve that was there, and they realised that they should really take advantage of that. So it was 84 or 86, correct me in the comments below, that they built Drumjohn, and it takes advantage of that, and actually means that, because before that, the excess water was just going into I think it was the Carstfairn Lane. No, it wasn't going into the Carstfairn Lane, so it was completely lost to the hydro scheme, the excess water. It was going into a different stream, can't remember which one. And so, it was like plugging a gap in the efficiency of the whole system, but it's only got one turbine.
There's also just recently, you used the phrase there, and maybe talk about it more next time, but I was reading Callie Phillips's book. Oh yeah. And it just never occurred to me that a lane is a Galloway term.
Yes, the lane is.
Just something that grew up with.
And Callie Phillips, by the way, seeing as we haven't spoken to her yet, is our next guest on the podcast, and she is very keen on SR Crockett and knows an awful lot about it.
Fascinating discussion.
Absolutely fascinating discussion, so well worth it.
So for those who don't know, a lane is just a burn, or again, being Scots, so anybody outside of Scotland, a stream.
Yeah, a stream, or a brook.
Yes. So you'll see a few of them on maps around the area. There's also one just outside New Galloway that basically goes down joins the burn that runs through New Galloway.
The Catstrand.
Aye.
And obviously there's the Carlingwark Lane, which goes from Carlingwark to the River Dee, which was where they drained the loch for when they did the excavations in there.
Was that not where they were also using when they did the canal? Or was
well, that is the canal. That's what that's what it was called. It was called the Carling Walk Lane.
Okay.
Which also begs a question as to whether maybe a lane is partially artificial or not.
So. I didn't notice, if you look at them on maps, they do tend to be rather straight.
Yes.
Which is not natural.
No, it's not natural.
It does not usually occur naturally, I should say.
No, because water goes where water goes, rather than in nice straight lines generally. Yes.
And then when you do have rivers being put into nice straight lines, then everywhere downstream starts getting flooded.
Yep. Which is not always a good idea.
Hello, River Nith.
Yes. The amount of people who say, oh, it should be dredged, dredge the River Nith. And it's like, you do realise that speeds the water up. But anyway.
Maybe try putting some of the bits that naturally slow it down a bit back in.
And well, a bit of rewilding actually tends to help with that, because you kind of bends and things then get an awful lot more nature around them, and that clogs it up and slows it down, which is what you want. Or beavers.
Let's get some beavers in the region. That'd be awesome.
That'd be fun. Yeah,
although I think around here it might be a bit more problematic with the hydro.
Well, but putting them on the Nith or the Cree, although I'd probably put power on the Cree. But anyway, that's completely irrelevant. So how was the mine that day then? Because it's an amazing site. There's just so much.
Every time I looked around, I'd see something that I'd missed. And so the grasses were getting quite long. So it was like sometimes you can wee knolls, and you can and there's quite a few kind of old paths down there. Some of them are difficult to spot, but you
do have to be careful where you're putting your feet in some places though, because if you walk up to where the chimney is, between the chimney and at the base of the hill is where the old lead refinery was, there are actually tunnels underneath, and they're made with slate and local rubble. And there's lots of places where the roof has actually collapsed, so you can end up, if you're not careful, putting your foot down through that.
And then you've got the old shaft as well. They're all fenced off.
Yes, there are like 5 or 6 of them. There's quite a lot of them in the hills there,
And I think the coolest one was probably the one with the dike around it and the trees growing in around it as well. It's kind of like, looked like quite a cool little stand. I'm like, what's going on there? So I actually went up and looked. And
there is also, somewhere up there, there's also another enclosure which has a memorial for a guy who was one of the last people who lived there, and there was some extremely heavy snows one year, and he actually died in the snows on the way back from Castrand. So there's a memorial to him there. I did a video about it, of course, so we'll maybe link that below. But it's a fascinating place, and it's a really interesting room. And General Cathcart McAdam built a village there to support it, and that included a school and a library, which obviously gets brownie points from me.
Obviously. I definitely recommend it as a walk out to do. It will be on my channel sometime soon. Again, as I say, I'm a bit behind. I'm working to catch up. But priorities.
Yeah, exactly. Life does what life does. Life throws at you these things, unfortunately.
Indeed.
Yeah. Now, as I said when we were catching up just there, Galloway in summer is actually a really, really busy place, and there's always lots and lots to do. That means it could take me from now until this time tomorrow to actually sum everything up, because it's that busy. So what I thought I would do was actually give you a wee roundup of good places to go and look to see what's going on. Let me just have a quick look at my list then. As I mentioned, Kirkcudbright Summer Activities, that happens every year. There's not just the Scottish Night, there is also lots of stuff put on for children. There's usually a medieval fair. There's all kinds of stuff actually, as a matter of fact. I would go and have a look. You can either check on Facebook, you just have to look for Summer Festivities on Facebook, and you'll know it's the Kirkcudbright one because it'll say Kirkcudbright Summer Festivities. Or you can go to www.kirkcudbright.town as well. Yeah, I know. It's quite interesting. And you will get the programme there, I think, and it will a whole bunch of other stuff as to what is going on in Kirkcudbright. Another good place I find to get a big rundown of events in the region is Dumfries and Galloway What's Going On as a website. They've got a really good events calendar where you can just see everything that's been submitted to them, and you can just sort of scroll down and it will give you all the information, and that's pretty handy. Again, that'll be linked below. It's also quite a good idea just to follow them on Facebook at Dumfries and Galloway What's Going On, because not only will they update you with events and things like that that are going, they also give you things like road updates, which can be very useful when travelling in the region, especially lately, because we've had lots of roadworks that have really put spanners in the works.
It's definitely been interesting when, as I say, the same with my stuff, the medical stuff, back and forth to the hospital.
And Dumfries, and the roads closing all over the place.
Is Townhead open today or not?
Yeah, absolutely. And me going backwards and forward to work in Castle Douglas, it's been quite fun too. Some days we've gone on a wee tour around past Bridge of Ar and all of that, and KPD, and other days we've done the other route down past Lauriston, which is very picturesque. Particularly like that because you go the other side of the loch. But yeah, so a useful site for lots of reasons. I'm going to put a wee plug in as well for follow Dumfries and Galloway Libraries on Facebook, because at Dumfries and Galloway Libraries there are loads of events going on through the summer. This year we've had craft workshops, free craft workshops for kids. We've had lots of libraries have Lego and have Lego building sessions, or just have Lego available. There's been the summer reading scheme. There's been some songwriting workshops that have been going on in the libraries as well. There's loads of stuff going on, so it's always worth having a look at our website, because at the Dumfries and Galloway Facebook page, because library's Facebook page, because we list all the events there, and I say we because I help with that, so I should maybe not say we there. So if you look at the Dumfries and Galloway Library's Facebook page, they list all of the events that they're having. I mean, there's author events and all kinds of things as well, which are good for adults, as well as there being loads of good free things for kids. Similarly, Dumfries and Galloway museums, there are loads of good things going on in the museums for everyone of all ages, but during the summer holidays, they have lots of good activities for kids as well. On Facebook, you'll find them at DG Museums. But if you look for www.dgculture.co.uk, you get a website which will tell you about the museums. It will tell you a little bit about some things going on in libraries. It will tell you a lot about various kind of art centres and things like that. So that's really good. All across Dumfries and Galloway as well, all summer, there's a thing, this is for kids, it's called Amazing Summer. They have the Amazing Summer of Fun, I think, might not be right, Amazing Summer of Play, but also the Amazing Summer of Sport. There's events going on all over the region for kids. If you go to the website, which is theyouth-inquiry-service.org, you'll find what's going on at the Amazing Summer. Loads of good stuff going on everywhere. Always the art centres. It's worth checking out the various art centres. Obviously, there's the Catstrand in New Galloway, which we are very friendly with. There's also the Quarryman's Centre in Creetown, and the Millennium Centre in Stranraer as well, and the Vault in Newton Stewart, and Glenshule Hive. All places where you can find plenty of stuff going on. So we'll put links to those in the comments below. And just Wigtown as well, because everything goes on, loads of good stuff goes on in Wigtown because of the book town, the book festival. They have events going on through the summer. So if you go to wigtown.scot, you will find out everything that's going on in Wigtown, and it's definitely worth a visit.
Busy, isn't it?
Busy, yes, absolutely.
And then one that we didn't mention last time, but just prior to recording,
We had the Scottish
Alternative
Games.
Which is now in its 49th year.
Yep, 50th year next year.
And this is the 25th year in New Galloway. Originally started in Parton.
Yep.
By Mungo Bryson.
Yes, indeed.
I remember going there as a kid, and it was Parton. And
yeah, I remember it being at Parton.
Doing the Garden Cleek.
Yeah, I never did the Garden Cleek. We watched them today, though.
We watched them today, and some ladies' tractor pull.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive, actually.
And then the tossing the sheaf.
Yeah, tossing the sheaf, which,
But it looked like there was some food, and some old classic cars around the place.
Yep, there was, and there was a circus going on with some interesting acts.
Aye, the contortionist looked...
yeah, the contortionist looked really quite interesting, yes, absolutely. And snail racing, we mustn't forget the snail racing.
I wonder if that first race is finished yet.
Oh, probably not, no, it's only 4:30.
Aye, so it's been 2 hours since it started.
So we won't know who's the winner. No, lots of good fun every year. You get to be world champion at the Garden Cleek. Yeah. So if you can manage that, and I can tell you, we were watching people today. There were a few people who were very, very good at it, and then everybody else was a bit.
The guy that was introduced as the 5 times world champion, we could see why. He looked very serious about it.
There's a way. You may see some footage.
And there was men and women, and then there's the juniors, the adults, and then the over 45s.
Over 45s, that made me feel old.
Yes. It takes place in New Galloway, in the park right across from the Catstrand.
Yep, every year. On the first Sunday in August. So
rain or shine.
Rain or shine, although it was shining quite a lot today, so they got a good day for it. And you get to see Brian Edgar in his kilt, as he is always the compere, and he's very, very good compere. He's a master of ceremonies for sure. So that was fun. It was always fun. So I would definitely recommend, if you're coming to the region next year at this time of year, go and have a look at it. It's unusual and different.
And speaking of the Catstrand.
Oh, well, yes. Last year, they launched a thing called the Land Notes Festival, and it's coming around this year. The walk that we'll tell you a wee bit about later, that we are leading, is part of the Land Notes Festival. But rather than me try and explain it all to you, we were over at the Catstrand earlier this week and actually had a chance to catch up with Jo. So we managed to ask her a few questions. So here's a wee video where Jo will explain to you all about Land Notes Festival.
Great to see you again. Thank you for popping in to see me.
It's wonderful. I wanted to talk to you about the Land Notes Festival.
Oh, yes, great.
Do you want to give us a bit of a brief background, first of all?
Absolutely. Well, it's our second year, so we had a really successful 5-day festival last year, 2025. And it came about because there was a need to recognise that Glenkens is changing and the landscape, and we, GCat, Cultural Glenkens and Catstrand, thought, what can we do to work together in order to highlight this change and celebrate it and recognise it and organise a series of events for a festival. So that happened, the first one, as I said, last year, and it was super. We had super attendance, and it was a success. So that was great, because it meant, yes, we can do it again. It's slightly shorter this year. We've still got wonderful funders, though, who I'd like to highlight. So there's Creative Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway, and the National Lottery Heritage Fund. So thanks to them and the generosity of people and folks coming on board, we've got a super weekend of events, which is going to run from Friday the 21st to the 23rd of August. But as you said, the background is it's a springboard from last year's successful festival to celebrate land and the Glenkens, of course.
Absolutely. Do you want to give us an idea of what kind of events we've got to look forward to?
Oh yes, well there's a huge mixture. We've got an exhibition on here at Catstrand, which is by Trinity Coombs, a wonderful up and coming photographer. So that's running throughout all of August. We've got walks and talks, and you and Andy are going to do a wonderful walk up Waterside Hills. I'm really excited about that. That'll be fantastic. We've got
the weather's good.
Yes. Oh, I know, that's one thing, but just dress. They say, don't they? Never bad weather, just bad clothing. But
yeah, that's absolutely right.
We'll see about that. We've got Grow Your Own Small Nature Reserve, which is an exciting project. That was actually one of they were all successful last year, but we asked John Wicks to come back to run that again, and that's up at Cuckoo-Stone. We've got an exciting new choreography piece, which has been put together to look about peat bog and the carbon. Let me get this right. The Crichton Carbon Centre are going to be there as well, and going to be doing Q&As after the wonderful dance piece, which is new innovative work with new music. What else have we got? We've got a water project. We're looking at water testing. We've got a wonderful peat bog experience. So I'm talking here and you might think, oh yes, there's kind of a bit of a theme going. We originally thought, let's make water the theme, but there's a few things that aren't associated with water specifically, but it's all to do with the land. We've got a wonderful creative workshop called Six Bowls. I'm not going to say more about that because it's about creation and it's intriguing and wonderful. So if anyone looks at that and thinks, oh, I'd like to be creative and know more about Six Bowls, then that's running. We've got an artist, John Wallace, and a science professor, Pete Smith, discussing environmental and video art project they're doing. We've got Tom Pow, the wonderful poet, and Joe Miller, a wonderful musician, coming to do a Ghost That's play. To talk about Japan and Glenkens music and cross-culture there, and all a conversation all around hallowed ground. And I think probably with Joe there'll be music. Got a Kaylee, Your Walk, as I said. We have got discussions, open forums, talking about living landscapes. We've got Right On Group, who's one of our cultural groups, doing a wonderful launch of Margaret Elphinstone's Time Seeds book. With readings from the group. We've got our successful banner parade and picnic, which we did last year. Again, weather-bound. Hope it'll be all right. We've got a wonderful thing about nature in the Glenkens and discussion around that and what we value about the environment. And we're finishing off on the Whirlwind Tour. I managed to get them all in. I said I didn't know if I would. Is a folk session led by Joe Miller at the Clack, and that finishes on the Sunday, and that's our closing event.
And that's definitely be worth getting along to.
Oh yes, well yes, and we've managed to, on the whole, time it all. So should you wish to your whole weekend to be devoted to land notes, you can hop, and you've got time in between to get in all the absolutely not too many choices. So we managed to fit it all in those days.
Well done. So do you want to tell us a bit about how it spreads across the Glenkens? What kind of locations we've got?
Yes, well, because it's just a weekend, we've tied it quite closely to New Galloway and Dalry. They're indoor as well as outdoor events, but we always have plan B, as we've mentioned before, about the weather, so contingency for hails and hurricanes, but hopefully we'll be okay in the month of August. If it's been like how we've had this summer, we should be singing and dancing. So it's not too spread far afield, but a nice mix of indoor and outdoor events as well.
Excellent. And what about booking? How do you go about booking? The very important question.
Very important question. Well, you can always hop onto the Catstrand website. All the events are up on our Performing Arts ticket booking platform. So you can book there. You can phone Catstrand and book directly on the phone, and they can do the admin and the computery stuff. You can always get in touch with me, Joe at catstrand.com, as well, if you've got any inquiries. So yes, those are the two main ways. And I'm going to do a little. There's a wonderful little tri-folder brochure that should be appearing in shops and things. That's got all the information, plus QR codes and links to how you can book. The prices mostly are £5 and £3, £5 adult, so and then 3 concessions. Absolutely. And there are 1 or 2 free events as well. So affordable for
plenty
all.
For everyone, and not too expensive for a weekend.
No, that's right. That's right. That's what we want.
What about plans for the future then?
Well, hopefully this will build. Once you get something in a formula that works. So yes, absolute plans to have one next year. Same month. Land Notes 3 it will be, and that comes under the auspice of Cultural Glenkens. It's an expectation of the project to deliver these yearly festivals. So yeah, it would be wonderful to see people back, and artists and creatives who've been involved in the last 2 years once we've got this one, by the way. But if anyone has any ideas or wants to be involved, or would like to see a certain event that think, that would be really great, please do get in touch with me, jo@catstrand.com. And we're thrilled to build it from here.
Excellent, wonderful. Yeah. No, we should celebrate our land. It's definitely worth celebrating.
Oh my goodness, and so precious. And of course, as we celebrate and talk about countlessly and endlessly, is how beautiful it is here. Oh, so yes. It is a gem and one to be
recurring theme.
Yes, and a good one.
And a good one. Absolutely. Oh, thank you very much, Jo. Thank you for having a few minutes with us to chat about it.
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled to talk about something we're putting together.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Well, that was really good to hear about that. Looking forward to some of the events. I'm looking forward to Joe Miller and Tom Powell specifically.
Joe Miller's a really fascinating person who we're very much hoping to get on the podcast. So watch this space for that.
And then there's the one about Tommy Edgar, looking at the life of Tommy Edgar, which again will be...
Yes. Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to quite a few things on it. Obviously the walk that we're doing, I am quite looking forward to that. But I think maybe the Cayley actually, but anything with Joe Miller. Anything with Joe Miller is good. Oh, speaking of Joe Miller, she's actually doing a thing at the Smiddy on the 19th of September as well, which is about the unsung fiddle traditions of Glenkens and Galloway. Fiddle was quite a prominent instrument in this area. It's funny because different areas of Scotland, there's particular instruments that are associated. You know, people are more likely to play bagpipes in one place and the sort of tin whistle and things like that. But around here it was fiddle, particularly.
Some of the old pubs used to get some people sitting around fiddling, and it was always nice. Yeah,
that stuff doesn't happen as much anymore, which is a shame. But as a matter of fact, Jo is a bit of a historian of that kind of thing anyway. I went to a talk she gave about the Glenkens and music traditions of the Glenkens a wee while back. And, you know, I guess the advent of television changed everything, but people used to spend a lot of time going around to each other's houses and playing instruments together. So people are a lot more musical back in the day, which I'm quite sad we've lost, to be honest.
Nice. Yeah. I'm not particularly musical, sadly, but like my mum played guitar and the odd harp and sing. So sadly skipped a generation, but hopefully the nephews will
pick something up. Oh, you never know. You might just stumble across an instrument that suits you, even now. Even now you're getting old and it's harder to learn at your age and all of that.
And can't keep a beat or...
I've met people who say that and then they actually aren't that bad, really. So I'm not sure as I believe you. But anyway.
We've got between the 8th and the 12th, so this podcast will actually already be out by that point, is the Race Across Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
Which is basically a 215-mile race following the Southern Upland Way from Portpatrick to Coburn's Path. I caught up with Bob Peace to learn more about the Race Across Scotland, and we had a lovely chat in his garden. Among the things we've talked previously, one thing we didn't talk about was you've been involved with the Race Across Scotland in the past.
I have, yes.
Can you tell us a bit about the Race Across Scotland, please?
It's a fascinating subject, really. For me, I just think these people that take part are inspirational. The Southern Upland Way is essentially 212 miles from Portpatrick in the west to Coburn's Path in the east. The Race Across Scotland follows the Southern Upland Way but adds about 3 miles onto that distance for the sake of visiting various checkpoints. So they get 100 hours to complete the event. Now, for me, as someone who has taken part in mountain marathons and various events, these people put me into the shade. I just think they're inspirational, and for them to come through our village, through the Glenkens, adds another attraction for us. It started, if my memory is correct, my first involvement anyway was in 2018 when I assisted in several ways, marshalling and helping with first aid, and then collecting the markers at the end of it, because that first event, the route was marked. There were markers up the street, and there was markers, a lot of them had little reflective bits on, because there were certain parts of the route. It had been worked out that these were bits that potentially were going to be people running through in the night. Back then, you know, so we're going back sort of 8-9 years, the route wasn't as well walked as it is now, so it wasn't as definite on the ground, and some bits were less walked than others for various reasons that I don't necessarily need to go into, but now it's considered that it needs to be more of a challenge, physical and mental. You have to have the ability to follow a map, but then technology is taking over, and everybody's got a fancy smartwatch, and they've got it on the phone, and they get messages if they go off route, etc. But when they get further towards the east, longer into the time, they get sleep deprived, and decision making isn't just as bright as it might be, and people make a left turn when they should be going right, they go right when they should be going left. But anyway, you know, it's a very worthwhile event to get involved with. The people are so appreciative of any assistance that they get, and of course there's a limited amount of assistance. Well, you know, you're not supposed to pick them up and give them a hurl down the road. But yeah, it's good. And this year, 2026, was I believe the 9th event, but it's gone from strength to strength in terms of the number of competitors. Initially, I don't think there was a huge amount of competitors, but this year we're looking at just under 180 set off, and I would anticipate that of those 180, probably 80 will fall by the wayside for various reasons, so maybe 100 will complete it within that 100 hours. For the benefit of all that hard work, they get a little prize, which is a buckle. It's a bit like a boxer's buckle, but the winner gets a rather embellished buckle. These people collect them because the GB Ultras that manage the race, they run other ultra marathons, and indeed do so from the village here. There is a 50-100 one. Nominally, it's 50 miles from here to Moffat. It's about 54 in actual fact. And if you want to do the 100, then keep on going and finish at Gala Shields, and you'll have done a little bit more than 100 miles. But essentially 50 and 100 at the beginning of June. And then the other one that they do in Scotland is from Glasgow to Edinburgh, and then there's several others in England, in Chester and the Pennine Barrier and various other events. So these days it seems to be that just running a marathon 26 miles isn't enough. It's not far enough. You need to do an ultra, and GB Ultras, this company, are catering for that demand, and good on them, and good on the competitors for taking it up.
As you say, it's just mind-blowing how well that they can do this and keep it going. Like the first person that came into Dalry, you got a bit of video of him coming up the road, and what was it, just under 12 hours to cover 60 miles between Port Patrick and Dalry? It's just
it was here just before 7 o'clock, and he started at 6 a.m. So 13, you're right, just under 12 hours, and it's not flat 60 miles.
No.
It's very undulating and challenging terrain, some tarmac, some gravelly forest road, a lot of hill roads. So yeah, these people are inspirational.
Yeah. So I've done. Well, I used to do hill races. Like I used to run up the Mulloch Hill here.
Mm-hmm.
I've done night hikes with the Scouts way back in the day, and I've obviously been caught out late and kind of hiked down a hill kind of in the fading light, and it's treacherous enough. Saturday night I could see the lights coming down Waterside Hill, and it's just the fact that they're running down here, and like some of them you could tell from the speed the lights were coming down, were running down that hill in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, it's inspiring. Scary.
Well, I think, you know, they do their own risk assessment, obviously, and sometimes these people fall, and they bounce back up and keep going. In the main,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they can be less fortunate, and that might be the end of their event.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is, those people who do not finish DNF, they'll come back next year.
Yeah.
And the ones that do finish come back next year because they want to do it quicker. There comes a point where they all decide, you know, enough is enough. I've done it. But there's one man who comes from Dalbeattie, Norman Nielsen. He is attempting, and I've every confidence that he'll finish this year. It's his 4th event. I believe that he will hold the record for having completed it more than anyone else. And he's not a youngster.
Nah.
I think he's 66, and I'm sure he'll not mind me telling you that. How long he's going to keep on going, I've no idea, but he's still a very fit person and has intimate knowledge of the Southern Upland Way. It's fascinating. I enjoy it. I look forward to it. I think most people will cross that finishing line with pride, knowing that they started at Portpatrick, they finished at Coburn's Path, they've done it in under 100 hours, and they qualify to be amongst those people who have finished.
Yes.
And that's the way I would sort of look at it.
As we've been sitting here chatting, the winner has finished. So the race was won by Ben Selden, who was running it for the first time apparently, and did it in 57 hours, which is mightily impressive. Yeah, we'll just finish off with a congratulations to everybody that's taken part.
Absolutely. I think when I've been at Coburn's Path and people have finished, they have always had a good word for every supporter along the way, whether they're supporting in an official capacity, either catering, marshalling, photography along the route, or just bystanders offering support and do you want a bottle of water or whatever. I think the camaraderie, the spirit is mind-blowing, really. Indeed.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're more than welcome.
On the 23rd of August, we are going to be leading a walk up Waterside Hill, where we're starting at the Town Hall at 9:30 in Dalry.
Yeah.
And we're basically going to go across the home and up round, past the score. If you've been at Waterside recently, it's a bit rough, but with the Race Across Scotland going through there, and we're hoping that the Southern Upland Way team will also be able to help out and get the path out to the score cleared out as well.
Yep, hopefully. So we'll be able to hopefully be able to take you out there.
And
it's
then
certainly in the works.
Right, and then up to the top to visit the statue that we talked to McNab Laurie about recently. So,
and that we visited when it was inaugurated in its spot as well.
And then back down. Tickets are available on the Catstrand website. Be delighted if you could come and join us, and hope for a lovely walk on that day. One note is dogs are welcome, but they must be kept on leashes. Yep. Just because it can get a bit busy, and some dogs can just get a bit rowdy, and not everybody's comfortable with dogs just approaching them.
Yes. We've also got a little promo video for you.
Yeah, so here's a wee promo for it.
Angela and I are going to be leading a walk up Waterside Hill on Sunday 23rd of August as part of the GCat and Catstrand's Land Notes Festival. Meet at Dalry Town Hall at 9:30. Tickets available from the Catstrand. Link will be in the description below.
Join us for stories, breathtaking views and a thoroughly good walk up Waterside Hill.
And now back to the rest of the Courtpath news.
So today's guest, who we spoke to a wee while back, as a matter of fact, is Ros Ollin, who is, as Andy already said, is a poet and the author of a book called Restoring Elspeth. Elspeth McEwan, the subject of Ros's book, was the last woman burned for witchcraft in Galloway. Absolutely fascinating to sit down and talk to her. I spoke to Ros first when she phoned up the library because she was doing research for Restoring Elspeth and she wanted to ask me some questions. I've done some videos about Elspeth's life. I wouldn't call myself an expert though, but I do live in the area, so my local knowledge was very useful to her. And yeah, it's a really good discussion and we hope you enjoy it too. Welcome, Ros Ollin, to the podcast.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So we start off with a few sort of light questions just to get us sort of warmed up before we get into the real meat of everything. So, first of all, I'm going to ask you, tell us what your first impressions of Galloway were when you first came to the area.
Well, that's interesting because I actually came to Galloway and Kirkcudbright in the millennium.
Oh, yes.
And it was millennium celebrations, and we came here because one of my dogs was scared of fireworks, and we thought it would be lovely and quiet in Kirkcudbright. How wrong we were!
Yes,
but actually, I fell in love with the country then, and since then I've been back. I've been coming regularly for the last 7 years. It's just warm, friendly, lovely countryside. Such knowledgeable people and such great storytellers in Dumfries and Galloway.
Yes, there is. We were lucky enough to have a storytelling this morning that we were at, actually, because we were at the top of Waterside Hill and we were treated to some lovely stories. That was with the statue that was being put in place.
Oh yeah, I couldn't get to that, but I would have loved to. Yeah.
Well, we've done some filming, so
Oh, good.
See all about it.
So could you tell us a bit about yourself from before you discovered Elspeth, please?
I'm South Wales is my homeland, but I've lived in Sheffield now since 1981. I was a teacher at a college, and then I became a university lecturer, and since doing that my life has been involved around teacher educating, helping people learn, doing a lot of overseas work with lots of different countries. And for me the absolute joy is seeing people develop in whatever way. And you know, I'm sure we'll come back to that when we're talking about Restoring Elspeth.
So you've also been here quite a few times now. Can you tell us what your favourite Galloway places actually are?
Oh gosh, I wrote such a long list I couldn't get it in.
Oh, that's okay.
I come every year to Rockcliffe, me and two friends. We come in January when it's cheap.
Yes.
And it's so wonderful, it's just the perfect bay. And Kirkcudbright I'm tremendously fond of, and there's a real buzz to it. Dalry is a gorgeous place, I think, and the more I come to Dalry, the more I discover the behind the scenes of Dalry, you know, not just the main street. And I mean, I could go on Threave Castle. I love Samueling Monastery. That's so peaceful. Wigtown and all the books. It's just got such a richness to it. What I think I like particularly is the sense of history that people have got here, and the wonderful historical things that you've got. The artefacts you've got. You've got the cairns, you've got the Holy Cairn Holy, you've got, so you've got all of things that old, but then you've got things like McClellan Castle and it just goes right across the board. And you talk to people and they know about it, which is so lovely,
It's a very storied area, that's definitely
It certainly is.
Yes.
Fortunate enough to grow up with books like Tales of Galloway, which kind of brought it to us as young, we were youngsters in the area, and then we were fortunate enough to be a school play, which helped learn a lot of the regional history as well, written by the local GPs.
That's wonderful. That's just great.
That was quite something. It's called Galloway Whispers, as a matter of fact, but it's a difficult thing to track down now.
Aye.
When you were researching Elspeth, obviously you've been digging into all the sort of local witchy folklore and everything. You'll have come across other little bits and pieces. Was there anything else that you just came across? You thought, well, that's odd, or really stood out to you?
I am aware of how much folklore there is, and I've read things like Alan Templey's Tales of Galloway. I've read a lot of things, and the Anna Lecter, which is fantastic. But actually, I'm really focused on researching Elspeth. So what became interesting to me was looking at the different folk tales about Elspeth. So when I looked at, when I compared accounts, there were all these discrepancies. They all started off with her stopping hens laying and milking the cow with a kibble stick. But then you could see how people had embroidered it, a little bit, or added new things to it, like the account in the Anna Lecter of the interview with Thomas Werner at Balmaclellan. It was obvious that Thomas Werner was a really old, sick man and couldn't remember much about Elspeth. And at one point he says she turned into a hare. And that, that wasn't a story that came out anywhere else at all. So it was more the fascination of how many different variations of a folk tale there could be about one individual.
That's it. I mean, interestingly, the turning into a hare thing, there's quite a few witch stories in the area which feature that. Particularly there's one which is at, what was it called? Near Huckenbach. There was a place called the Druth. And there was a witch there who apparently could turn into a hare, and quite often would be seen as a hare drinking milk from the cows in the fields. The kinds of mad things that
you can see the crossovers, can't you?
Exactly.
That people have liked that particular story, but they put it into another person's story.
That's it. Exactly. And those things were in the zeitgeist at the time, so they will have attached themselves to Elspeth.
But it is a very magic orientated county. I think you do get a sense of oldness in old tales.
That's it.
Can you tell us how you found out about Elspeth and the story that sort of built up from there, please?
Yes, I was in Kirkcudbright about 7 years ago, just on holiday, and I decided to go to the Tollbooth Museum. And I went up the stairs, went to the top. The thing that caught my eye was on the wall. And essentially it was a copy of an original list, and it was the list for Elspeth McEwan's burning.
Oh yes.
So it had things like coal, peat for burning. It had a tar barrel. It had beer for the executioner. All of those things. Overlaid over this copy was a typewritten. What I thought was just a translation, because obviously the writing was very difficult to understand.
Yes.
So when I read that, one of the items had been tows, which are ropes, small and great, to tie Elspeth to the stake. So that was on the actual original list.
Yes.
But somebody who typed the list up had put to tie the poor creature to the stake.
Yes, yes.
So that really piqued my interest, because that was an official accounting list. It's one that would have gone to the town council. You know, people would have approved it. You know, there was the signature of the Burg treasurer on it. I couldn't understand how somebody would put themselves basically in such prominent danger, if you like, or vulnerability, to actually call her a poor creature. I subsequently found out that it was in W.D. Dickey's History of the Burg in 1911, that list, which actually said poor creature. So I think whoever typed it, I don't quite know when typewriters were used a lot, whoever typed it probably was round about that time.
Yes. By that point in time, obviously, that by and large, most people were getting past the witch panics as well, because it was so late on. So, you know, some of the people would have sympathised with her, with it, you know, and I suppose the backlash wasn't even the same. There's this story of a girl who was about 3 or 4 years before Elspeth, over by Dumfries, who declared herself a witch. I think she may have had some mental health problems. And the people over there by Closeburn, which is just near Dumfries, they basically just were like, maybe not. You know, they were much more sort of sensible and rational about it. So in the end up, you know, she lived on and you know, she never was punished or anything like that, because it was clear that there were other issues going on, and people were a bit more sort of reasonable about these things by then. So it's the fact that, it's down to the people of the Glenkens at that point, really. The fact that it was so late on, which is quite a shame.
I think that's very interesting. You're absolutely right that there was much more tolerance. Yes. And very few burnings in Dumfries and Galloway. They were, I mean, she was the last person accused which burnt in Galloway.
Yeah, that's it.
In Scotland as a whole, there were later burnings, as you know, but really the energy had gone out of the persecution. So it was very strange that she was 2 years in a Tolbooth prison.
Yes.
She didn't confess.
I know, that takes some strength of character.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And still she got burned. So who wanted her dead was the question that I was kind of really pursuing, you know.
Yes, no, that's
and there's lots of different possibilities.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So when did it come to you that the idea of actually turning her life into poetry as a way of connecting with her then?
Well, I suppose I was a member of a group of poets in Sheffield, and you know, I was writing poems and you know, occasionally doing readings with them, but I wouldn't have called myself a poet. I just liked writing poetry. But when I started to research her, and there are all these kind of strange discrepancies, you know, why did they do that? Why didn't she confess earlier? Why did she hold on? Why, when Mary Miller, who was tried on the same day as her, got exiled, did Elspeth get the execution? And, you know, surely people in the town, some of them, like you say, Angela, she was there for 2 years, right in the midst, when the market was going on. They would have known that she was behind those walls, you know. I can't help feeling that at least some of them would have thought, well, poor old soul, she hasn't confessed yet.
Yes.
Isn't it about time we let her go? So it was one of those, more and more questions came.
Yes.
And I'm the kind of poet that I get a bit fed up with picking poems kind of almost at random. Do you know, so one of the problems I think about being in a poetry group, and the others are very good poets. I mean, there's and I'm very, very grateful, and I love being in the group. But sometimes you're scratching your head about what to write about. And I found that I always wanted my writing to be a gift to someone. So the first poem, the poem that made me join the poetry group, or then asked me to join, was actually a poem that was written for the brother of a dear friend of mine. And he died in sad circumstances, really. I didn't want him, and obviously nor did she, didn't want him to be just remembered for the sad circumstances of his death. And he was an engineer, and he loved motorbikes, and and so I wrote a poem which was a poem about celebrating the things that were about him as a human being, not his sad end. And I suppose, I wrote an elegy for my brother about his love of music, and that was a gift to him. And people really liked those. And I think the thing is that when I wrote those, I felt as though there was some real meaning in what I was writing. I wasn't just thinking, well, that's a beautiful flower, I could write a poem about it. Because there are thousands and millions of much better poems than I could ever write about beautiful flowers. But what I can do is try and bring qualities of people to life. And so that's when I started thinking I wanted to do that for Elspeth, because the awful thing about Elspeth was that she was only remembered really for the horrible way she died. She was remembered for stealing, for stopping neighbours' hens laying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, things that she didn't do.
Well, she might even have done them. I don't know. But in a story, there's always somebody telling it, isn't it? And who were the people telling the story that she was a witch, and what were their vested interests?
Yes, that's it.
What did they gain from her dying?
Yes.
And those are the kind of questions that I was wondering. So I thought, I want to give a gift to Elspeth. I can't do anything about her death, obviously, because it was 1698.
Yes.
But what I can do is give her another story, a different story, that will make people care that this human being was killed horribly. And I just couldn't face writing a novel.
Fair enough.
But also there are loads of novels about this subject, particularly now.
Yes.
Because when I first started, there was just it was drawn to my attention that there was a Facebook group called Remembering the Accused Witches of Scotland, which you know. But apart from that, there really wasn't much interest. And then over these 7 years, it's grown and grown and grown until you've got people like the Witches of Scotland who got Nicola Sturgeon to, issue the pardon on International Women's Day. So I thought I want to give Elspeth that gift of humanity, particularly at this time when we're dehumanising and demonising people who are different in whatever way. And of course it was a time of famine, as you know, and it was a time of immigrants coming from the north of Scotland, because there was a famine in Dumfries and Galloway, as you've said. There still was better pasture and better growing land than in the north of Scotland. So many of the issues that we're dealing with now, the use of fuel, that landowners were grabbing the peat rights, so they were taking them away from the common agricultural workers. All of those things, you've got parallels today.
Yes.
So it seemed to me it wasn't just a historical poem, it was a poem that actually people could read and make the connections, which is I very much wanted people to do without ramming it down their throats,
Absolutely.
And poems are wonderful in that they're condensed forms of experience. So because I'd kind of, in my research, done a timeline of the events, you know, from the neighbours accusing her right through to the day of the execution, I basically had a series of events, and, you know, the accusations, you know, the Kirk sessions, the trip to, you know, the summons from the Beadle, the bloody bray of which you told me about, in fact.
That story is
about Mullakill,
That's it. It's one of those, that particular story, it's one of those stories you as you read it you think, was that just concocted for just a bit of extra evidence? Do you know what I mean? Because obviously the horse didn't sweat blood. Yeah.
You might think all of that, and I mean, I just don't know. But there is such a thing as the racehorse lung disease, and that involves sweating blood. And it seems to me that horse would have been old because it was an army horse.
Yes.
And you know, it was going up Mullakill, which isn't a big hill. You know, it was going round, but then it was going up over the rise. And you know, I've made the Beadle somebody who's pretty heavy. So you know, it could just
been too much.
You can see a real reason why the horse could have you know, spouted blood. So poems are concise.
Yes.
And you can do it over a period of time. So I did it over 6 years. And I workshopped it, and I shared them with people, and I went round, I talked to so many of the brilliant people in Dumfries and Galloway, the storytellers. I came to talk to you a few times, pestered you, didn't I? You know, what do you think about this, Angela?
Yeah, so it's great.
And, you know, tested out my ideas, you know, how do you think the Covenanters might have been involved in this? Or got to know a lot of people, and a lot of people seem to have a real interest in this restoring, if you like, of Elspeth McEwan.
It's about time, though.
Well, you know, and poems meant that I could write a poem about each event. And I thought, is it going to all be in the third person? So it's just me telling a tale of she. And then I thought, no, because there are so many questions in this story that actually sometimes I think I've got to question her directly.
So,
to draw, you know, to draw people in and to not make her two-dimensional. So one of the poems is actually about, well, Elspeth, you know, when people didn't like you, did you actually prefer fear to pity? And did you start waving the kipple stick? Not necessarily because I think she did, but because there's lots of documented accounts of people using their power, or the power that was attributed to them, to kind of find a place in their local village, for example. So I workshopped them over the years. People seemed to like them. I read the poem about hands to different people in Dumfries and Galloway, and each of them cried.
Yes,
which was wonderful.
I found that particularly moving, just because it really pulled you straight into the character and the experience and the difference of experience. You know, it gave you that sense of her as growing up as a child and growing as a person well before you got to the sort of unpleasant crux of her story. So.
I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, it was really difficult to write that because I couldn't give her a description because there isn't a description. But I didn't want to pin her down either. And you know, the cover of the book, which has got their hands, you know, one in another, you know, waiting for the sun to rise.
Yes.
My son-in-law designed it with me and produced, you know, the image. But we couldn't find hands that were the right age, because I was sure that Elspeth wasn't, you know, she might have been 40 plus, and she was called the old woman of Bonnie, but actually she possibly was only 40. And just so happened in their house at the time was somebody who was a sculptor. Oh, yes. So she had well-worn hands, but she was only 50.
Right.
So it's her hands in that picture. So every part of it has been under my control. It's self-published deliberately.
Yes.
And I've been able to give it away if I wanted to. Yes. I've been able to, you know, I've had conversations with people sitting next to them in a cafe, and suddenly they've asked me all about this, and I've given them a copy at the end. Or you know,
lovely. No, it's lovely that you can do that. Actually,
I can do that. If I was with a publisher, I couldn't have any of that freedom.
No, you wouldn't. No.
There's so much more to these stories, and other than the accused and the circumstances around her. There's obviously William Boyd, the minister from Darai, who sent her to the toll booth, having been brought in by another minister who was not wanting to get involved. And then the rather unfortunate man who was essentially coerced into being the executioner, William Kirk as well, another William. And was there any other standout side characters in your research?
There was I mean, in my research, I did come across a number of these people, and everybody that's mentioned in the poem was a real person. And so I did the same research on them as I did on Elspeth. The thing about Elspeth is that there were so few records that there was hardly any historical fact about her at all. And you really had to comb through things to find them. But with some of them, there was quite a lot of documentation. So William Kirk, the executioner, there's quite a story that's built up just from Berg records, and you know, the fact that he went to the Kirk sessions the year after the execution at Kirkcudbright to ask them to give him more money because nobody in the countryside would help him. They would offer him no aid, and they would throw stones at him. So that, to me, is a kind of indication that maybe what he did is what he was unwilling to do. He was right to be worried about how people would treat him. But there's his wonderful character. William Boyd, fantastic character, friend of William of Orange. Obviously somebody who was absolutely passionate at what they called eliminating evil or fighting evil. And the story, for example, about, I think it was a bumblebee actually, but I used a butterfly because I just like the image better. But it was a bumblebee that he thought was the devil that was buzzing around him, and then the man on a dark horse taking the daughter away, you know. And you know, those kind of things, they are reported quite frequently, those particular incidents. Andrew Cameron is another one who's very well documented. And I'm hoping that people will read the book and think, oh, I could go and do a bit more research about that character. Or, you know, as new records come in online or what have you, there's all those possibilities. So Andrew Cameron, absolutely fascinating, because a number of sources said that he was the brother of Richard Cameron, who was the Covenant martyr who had his head cut off and stuck on a pike. But when I looked through the records, he couldn't have been Richard Cameron's brother. But it's quite possible that he was kin. And it's quite possible that, you know, the Covenanters I know called each other brother and sister. So, you know, there's all sorts of reasons why people might think he was Richard Cameron's brother. But he's a fascinating character, and what a predicament. He's come to for the quiet life in Kirkcudbright, and then he's got this highly controversial case with all this pressure from the landowners wanting to see it resolved. But the people that were judges, Sir John Maxwell, for example, he presided over loads of witch trials. If you look through the records.
Yes, he was very keen.
He was very keen. Now, I'd be very suspicious of that.
Yes.
You know? And the idea that only 3 volunteers out of the 8 names that were put on the Privy Council's list of people who could be judges and run the trial. They could volunteer. To me, it immediately indicates a bit of a stitch-up, doesn't it, really? And the Beadle, McClure, Lambrook, you know, I mean, all of those characters are really well worth researching a lot more. And more may come up about Elspeth as a result, you know.
And that's it. So as you start looking into the other people, and they will have somewhere along the way that where their paths have crossed with her, there may be a record which would be
you forget that they all knew each other, and they were all friends, and they all, it's like Donald Trump. Am I allowed to say that? There's all these connections, and I'll do you a favour, you do me a favour.
Because one of the things that I discovered as well, down at near Dundrennan, there's a place called Rerrick. And the minister at the same time, around the same time there at Rerrick, was involved in what was essentially a poltergeist story, which eventually he made into a pamphlet and sold in Edinburgh at the time when the last person who was ever hanged for atheism was hung. And the whole shtick about what the Rerrick ghost supposedly was saying was basically people who were sinners, people who were heretics, they were going to stop everyone in Scotland from going to heaven, and you're all going to hell because of this. And it's like, that's a bit of a story. But he had the minister from Crossmichael come in and check it. He had the minister from Kells come in and check it. He'll have known William Boyd perfectly well as well. So they're all very, very interconnected.
And they were in the army together.
Yes.
They actually fought together on the same side. And so people forget that when they're doing history about these cliques and, groups of people. And something that I was very keen about is we're in a time where truth is at a premium. And actually, I was determined that I would only put in factual information that I could evidence.
Yes.
And if I couldn't evidence it, then I would make it clear. And that's why I ended up writing the notes, because I wanted people to see a historical research process. That you make decisions sometimes when you're writing creatively, don't you?
Yes, you do.
But it's got to be plausible, and it's got to be embedded in what could have happened.
That's it.
But where there was a fact, I used the fact.
Yes. Because we don't seem to be really quite as appreciative of facts now as we ought to be.
Well, we're taking this into schools, and I'm really hoping that schools will begin to use that, use the book as a way of talking about fake news and truth, and how stories about people are constructed, and who's got vested interests in portraying them in a particular way.
You've been into the schools around here to talk to the
kids? Been
into
Dalry and had a lovely session with a group of lads. That was brilliant.
Excellent.
And they ended up reading some of the poems, and I think they've produced some work resulting from it. And I'm going into another school, a big school, in a couple of days' time. And they've allocated a whole day to it.
Excellent.
So I'm going to do a workshop, and then various teachers for different disciplines, history, English, creative arts, performance. They're going to split up, and they're going to have a day doing activities related to the book.
Oh, that's really good.
And I'm completely delighted to do it.
That's wonderful. That is absolutely wonderful. No, it's great to be able to take these things to the local children. I've been into the school to take stories to them, and it makes a difference. It helps them understand where they come from.
Absolutely, and always who's telling them.
Yes. Well, where's the story coming from? Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
It's also just making sure they don't get forgotten. We've sort of spoken to people in the not too distant past, and it's kind of, you asked me about, say, Adam Forrester, who
local story, which is very deeply involved with all the witchy things.
Inspired Rabbie Burns to write Tam O'Shanter. But there's people who round here that are growing up here hadn't heard of it.
We did it at school.
We went off, we'll go up Ostracide with a teacher who'd take us to the score, which has got a bit overgrown over the years, although last year the Southern Upland Way team did make a path out to it.
Yeah, it's much better now.
So it's it's a lot better now, but it is just, these things can so easily get forgotten if they're not written down.
They do, or people get used to seeing something like a monument for the Covenanters, and whereas maybe 20 years ago people would have been taught about it in schools, they may not be being taught about it, because, you know, schools have got such massive curriculum that they've got to kind of move on and do other things. But the monument to the Covenanters in Dalry is fantastic.
It is, yes.
You know, it's just a nest of stories about people, isn't it? It's wonderful.
Well, because it has the names on the bushes and on the leaves, so that you can then, you remember the names, you can go research the names, you can learn more. And, yeah, it was quite a time. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what Elspeth would have endured when she was in the toll booth?
Well, there's a poem which is called The Lay Cell. She was in the lowest cell, the one under the tower, the dark one, that I don't think it would have had any natural light. And she would have been chained to the wall, which means that the space that she could move in would be very limited. And also it would be completely filthy, and there was no
sanitation,
lavatory facilities or anything, do you know what I mean? But also, if you think of, she would have to sit in the same position all the time. You know, she might never even be able to stretch out her legs, you just don't know. So she had that situation. It would be dark, it would be, the walls would be dripping, it would be cold or very hot.
Yes.
And Bessie Payne, who was in another cell in the toll booth prison a few years before, died of starvation because Elspeth was actually fed by Dalry.
Yeah, she was. I saw that. Yes, it was in the parish
but
records.
Most prisoners weren't. So she got an absolute minimum. It's a very small amount that they paid. But other prisoners would not get anything, so they would just starve to death. And I think that's why when Janet Corby comes in to this awful cell, and Elspeth is taken out lots of nights for what was called the waking torture. So that meant that the guards wouldn't let her sleep. And they would make her walk around, but also they would just prod her and, you know, tell her not to sleep, which is a standard form of torture right across the world.
It is, yes.
And, you know, one of the things about torture like that is it creates hallucinations as well. And then Janet Corby comes in the cell, and just for a short time, Elspeth has got somebody who believes in her, who says they sin their souls that say you are a witch. And, you know, it seems to me that may have given Elspeth the courage to carry on, even when Janet herself was sent to exile.
Yes.
A dreadful, carrying out that for 2 years.
I know, 2 years of it. It's amazing that such things went on, where nowadays, you know, we don't even think about it, because we imagine ourselves to be so civilised that doesn't, you know, it doesn't cross our threshold, as it were.
We're lucky, aren't we?
I know we are very lucky.
We're lucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've obviously talked about kind of some of the process of looking into it. Now, around about that time, the Kirk, the Church of Scotland, was tasked with taking care of the records, all the historical records, and not a great job was done. Most records from around these times have been destroyed and or just missing, and they could be in a vault somewhere, so we can't just say they're totally destroyed. But that obviously would have made it pretty challenging. Can you tell us about the sort of process that you went through when doing the research, and like what challenges you faced, like kind of missing records, etc.?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, how long have we got? My great piece of luck was that I went into the Stewartry Museum very early on, and Isla Scott, who was reading the poems with me this afternoon, was there and was very interested in what I was doing. And so she was a very good first port of call for kind of turning out Berg records and, you know, and telling me, well, she told me about remembering the accused wishes of Scotland, but also talking over things like the Covenanters and what would their motivations have been. So Isla's been an invaluable resource for 7 years now. And other people, I just went and talked to so many different people. So, you know, I got quite a lot of clues from talking to people. You know. Somebody would tell me, oh yeah, if you look there, you'll find that. Now, I mean, I've got children, I've got grandchildren, I've got a very busy life in Sheffield. I was doing other research, you know, I would come up here as often as possible. But I would do a lot online. So the National Library of Scotland was great, and Scotland's people were great.
Oh yes.
And all of those, what they did was they told me the bits that were missing, really. And sometimes you had to look at them really carefully, as you'll know, because one will have a bit that's missing, but the other one won't necessarily. The heritage, I forgot what it's called now, the Scottish heritage, it's got another Trove,
That's it.
They were great. They were great with photographs. But it was just a lot of hard work. I just kept tracking things. There's some very, very good podcasts, obviously, but there's some very good sites. And the site, you know, there were sites where, say if I put in William Boyd and William of Orange, things would come up. You know, the internet has been a phenomenal resource, more to cross-check, to triangulate, and to see where the differing stories arose. But so many records were lost. Oliver Cromwell destroyed loads of records. You know, other wars destroyed records. It's the first thing you do, isn't it? Is go and you burn all the civic buildings where everything's kept. Yes, you know, you've mentioned, Andy, you know, Kirk ministers weren't necessarily on the ball with record keeping. Do you know, there was a big range, I believe, of kind of educational background and with the motivation to actually keep meticulous records and the money to do it. And sometimes you'll find bits of records that are meticulous, and you think, that was somebody who just for a few weeks got really interested. All you can do is persist and cross-reference and but it is a difficult job, isn't it?
Because we were looking at the church records with William Boyd had been keeping. And guess who was not mentioned?
Well, because in
who was not mentioned? Sorry,
well, Elspeth wasn't.
Was not mentioned in William Boyd's.
In the parochial records, the old parochial registers, you've got all of the baptisms, the funerals, various other little bits and pieces. You know, there's some very interesting things about people being born of fornication. You know, there's those kind of like really meticulous records, but just completely nothing, even nothing about people in the parish, in the parish raising funds to send money to feed Elspeth. Nothing about that in the parochial registers.
I don't know. That's interesting you should say that, because it's never occurred to me that they might have raised money. That I thought it was just the church, the kirk itself, you know, just sending it. But that's an interesting take on it.
I know for a fact that later on, when it came to the last woman who was publicly hanged in Scotland, came from just outside Dara on the other side of the village, and people then, nearly 200 years later, did a big whip round to try and make sure that, you know, she was better taken care of.
Right, okay, yeah.
So as we mentioned with the records, things can be a bit all over the place, and there's many different spellings of many different people's names, firsts and last names all over the place. And noticed in the book you had the word cloud. How did you choose the decisions you made with like the spellings of her first name and surname?
Elspeth, I think, sometimes it was Elspeth. I only saw one or two where it was Elizabeth. Elspeth, I felt, was reasonable. And in the Analecta, Thomas Werner just calls her Elspeth, which is one of the reasons why I think he's looking back to her childhood, because that's the childhood name. I started off by calling her McGowan, And then I talked to lots and lots of people, and I kept saying, what would you use? What would you use? And it got narrowed down to MC capital E WAN and MCK. And I just thought that for people that K gives a harder sound. So it's you know, perhaps I was thinking about it within poems or within talking about it. There was it was easier to say. That you know, I think people have disagreed with it, but I said, well, I've got 15 spellings already.
Yes.
Yeah, we you know, we've got to decide, and that's the one I'm going to decide on. But I'm really happy. People are going to look at the book. They're going to disagree with things. They're gonna go away and hopefully research more and find that I've got some facts wrong or whatever. It's work in progress, you know.
Creates discussion and debate.
A discussion and debate as well, yeah.
I tend to use McEwan, MC Ewan, partly because that would, to my mind, that's the modernised version of what, you know, the spelling. So it's a modern name. Yeah. So that tends to be why I use that, because people can understand that more. It seems more familiar because it is.
Right, yeah.
We used to have a McEwan's bus service around here, so McEwan is you know, it's a name that we recognise in that way. So that's why I've used that.
I think it's just as well that if anybody's interested in her, they know that there are all these different spellings and that they're all right, and that within the Privy Council Commission report, there are 2 different spellings in the same report.
Yes.
You know, so there's no right or wrong here. If it's been used somewhere,
yes, that's
there's all there is frequency of use. And I think definitely for people around here, it makes so much sense if they had a bus with a written
exactly, exactly.
Call it that. I just made a decision.
As you say, with the hard K in it makes it easier to McEwan.
It just is, yeah.
That's it.
But maybe just for Welsh people or English people, but not Scottish people. You know
That's it,
absolutely.
What do you think people might have to learn today from the witch panics, and what lessons can we take from all of this, do you think, for modern life?
That's a very good question, isn't it? It's a big question. I would hope that people take a lot of parallels between what happened then, and what's happened throughout history, and what is happening now. And I think the lesson that there's 2 lessons that I really wish that people would understand and sort of take on board. One is, what is the truth here? And is the truth, that's all one question. So what's the truth here? Is the truth evidenced? Is this truth evidenced? What is the evidence? Is it solid? Okay. How do you tell the difference between truth and fake? And then, so all of that's one, really. And then one is, who's telling the story, and who stands to gain from this outcome.
Yes.
And I think if they just take those 2 away, if you ask those questions for Elspeth, and you ask those questions for all the people that are being discriminated against now, and you ask the question, who stands to gain for certain political parties, for example, coming to power, we all know probably what I'm talking about, who stands to gain, and to track back. You know, the old question would always be, when you're a detective, follow the money.
Yes.
I would say follow the money and follow the currency of power.
Yes.
That those actions take, you know.
That's very sound advice.
Definitely,
there's definitely power.
So it's so what's happening now, I think, is so important, and it's a way of the interest in witchcraft I know that there is the idea about magic and you know, there's those strands. But to me, the interest in witchcraft is particularly a way of women. But I'm not saying that men don't join in, because they do, some of them. Mainly women were executed for witchcraft, so that's why I'm focusing on the women. But there's so much, so many factions in, say, for example, feminism at the moment, that I feel that focusing on pardoning women who were discriminated against in the past is actually a way of bringing together those factions without having to continually argue that, you know, my faction is more important than yours, or your faction doesn't exist anymore. It's a waste of time. You know, it's just a waste of time when we ought to be somehow working together. And I think that's really, for me, why the rise in interest in witchcraft is actually very, very important, because it looks at people like Elspeth.
Yes.
We talked about at the start, like places that you discovered when you came here. Is there anywhere in Galloway that you particularly recommend to others who are coming to the region that they need to check out while they're here? I mean, it really is a difficult question, because I could just name so many different places. I think what I'd say is, think about what Galloway, apart from its beauty, think about what, to me, Galloway is really special for, is has such a strong sense of history. Travelling across millennia, you know, and there are artefacts all over the place in beautiful places. We went to Cairnholy yesterday. Oh, yes. What a gorgeous location.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But they're all over the place. They're just everywhere. And there are, you know, wonderful, wonderful historical records in the museums. And really, Dumfries and Galloway has got all these wonderful local museums. Some of them may look a bit old-fashioned to people when you go in, but I really would love people to think, what is the value of, say, being able to hold a musket, for example, to know how heavy it is, to know where people's fingers were positioned when they fired it. That takes you, that touching an artefact takes you back to that time. And that's what you do not get with online learning. You don't get that use of those senses. And I think that the local museums all around Dumfries and Galloway have got excellent artefacts and excellent specialists there who maybe even just volunteers, but they know a lot.
There's a lot of good people working in our museums, it must be said. I particularly like Dumfries
Museum. And their libraries.
Well, yeah, of course.
And their libraries, you know. Use the resources and go with a curious mind. And Dumfries and Galloway's got so much to offer. Yeah.
That's out there, absolutely. Is there a little Galloway mystery in all of your researches? Is there something that you just didn't manage to kind of like wrap up or close up that maybe somebody who's watching this might know more about, that you could maybe see?
I have to say, if anybody could find out where Elspeth McEwan was born, who her parents were, and how she got to the house in Bolher, that is the absolute mystery that would help us to know more about her, and create, maybe from that very small book that's my book, you know, a novel or, you know, a work of non-fiction, which is just all about everything about this woman. Because you know, were her parents Covenanters? You know, but Covenanters weren't all extreme. No. There are always people in the middle that say things like, well, I kind of agree, but actually I don't really want to get too involved, do you know what I mean? History often focuses on the extremes, and in a way what is more interesting is the people that fluctuate from one position to another because of different circumstances. So that's my conundrum, I'm afraid.
That's a very good one. That's one that I would like to know more about as well.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Ros. It's been absolutely fascinating.
It's been
delightful. And it's been wonderful to talk to you again. It was wonderful to help you with the book, and as much as I managed to contribute, really enjoyed it.
And one of your pictures.
Oh yes,
beautiful picture of Mullock Hill,
that's it, yeah.
which is absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, much appreciated.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
Excellent.
Oh, that was a fascinating discussion.
It was.
Also interesting seeing the old setup while we're going through the editing, because it's been a couple of months and it's like, yep, okay, we've changed that about a bit. And
I think we're more
I'm
comfortable
no longer
now.
peering round a box.
Yes, it's all much better. I do think it's much better. And I'm more comfortable.
Yes,
so
far more comfortable.
Yeah. So sorry, Ros, when you're watching this.
Yes, sorry.
Apologise, we have made it better.
But yeah, like I learned some things, and from that, it's like I was aware, and I've seen your videos as well, but going just a little bit more in depth is...
Yes, I mean, it's one of those sad stories. I think basically at the heart of it, it was probably just a neighbour dispute. And at that time, that could kind of spiral out of control, although by and large, people had stopped doing that, which is kind of why it's so sad that it happened to Elspeth in the way it did.
Still rampant misogyny, but...
Yeah. I mean, we're still living with that still. Thank you, John Knox. But yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. In our next episode, we will be talking to Callie Phillips, who we mentioned earlier, who is written some books and is an expert on local author S.R. Crockett. Again, another fascinating discussion. Hope you can join us for that.
If there's anything in the podcast that you want to reach out to us about, or if you actually would like to speak to us about anything, if you'd like to come on the podcast and you've got something really interesting to share with us, or if perhaps you'd like to sponsor the podcast in your local business, just drop us a line at talkinggallowaypodcast@protonmail.com.
You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Talking Galloway Podcast.
And of course, we're on YouTube.
And YouTube and all podcast channels.
Yeah. So, another good episode. I'm really... It's been great weather, so we've had plenty of opportunities to go out and do wee bits of filming along the way. So hopefully you'll have enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time.
Indeed.
Cheerio.
Pleasure. We'd like to thank Cultural Glenkens through Catstrand with help from the National Lottery Heritage Fund for their funding and support. We'd also like to thank the Glenkens Community Shop for their funding, the Glenkens Community Centre for use of the venue, and Dumfries and Galloway Library Service. Music, Bonnie Gallowa, arranged by Anne Chaurand, performed by Anne Chaurand and Faith Hillier. Finally, if you'd like to support us, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee. Link will be in the description, or if you are a business local to Galloway and would like to sponsor us, please reach out to us at talkinggallowaypodcast@protonmail.com.